Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and, with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight. Most Nightlight shows deal with the legacy of mythical lands like Atlantis, or the legacy of ancient Egypt, or a often overlooked passage of the Bible. And these are fascinating topics to read about, but most of us have not actually experienced them. Tonight's show is about the legacy of a friend to Nightlight and all of the guests. Mike Pipher passed away a few weeks ago. He was a guest with us about 3 years ago, and he's covering Twilight Zone and Rod Serling. Mike actually met him a couple times. We'll probably touch on that at some point over the next couple hours. Anyhow, through Mike's influence, many Nightlight guests stem from actually meeting Mike and working with him. Starting maybe 8 years ago. So tonight's show is about celebrating Mike. For example, we've promoted several Twilight Zone conferences. We've had Ann Serling and Bill Mooney as guests. Profiling author Mark Olshaker has been on with us a couple times. Classic TV and radio scholars Martin Grams and Helen and Johnny Holmes have made appearances. Mark DeWidziak has been a guest numerous times. Arlen Schumer had a series on Nightlight. Gary Clevenger has been a guest talking about Buddy Holly and his Twilight Zone research. Nick Parisi, I think he's going to be here for the second hour. He's been a guest a couple times. He has, fantastic book, biography. Rod Serling, his life, work, and imagination. So, many of these same guests have appeared on numerous other podcasts. So, there is a sample of Mike's incomparable influence on Nightlight, and we will continue to learn more over the show. Martin Grams, author of the Twilight Zone, Unlocking the Door to a Television Classic, is at work this evening, but he contributed a eulogy, and Solaris is here with us. She was good friends with Mike as well, and her colleague Tina Marie. And Solaris, are you able to pull up the eulogy to get us started?
I have it right in front of me.
Okay.
Thank you. Let me know when you're ready.
Oh, you can go anytime.
Okay. All right. One Michael Pipher, a resident of Binghamton, New York, and a man with one monstrous imagination. Early on, Mike displayed a fascination with science fiction magazines and motion pictures, later kindling a spark for the late Rod Serling, to whom he came to idolize. While Mike devoted much of his life preserving the films and writings of Serling, he set a precedent that is unequaled in the history of television preservation. Mike was born in 1952, and his hometown was Johnson City, New York, where he majored in liberal arts at a community college. He spent the last 20 years residing in the small town of Binghamton, also known as Rod Serling's hometown. It was Mike who would spearhead the Rod Serling exhibit, now located at the Bundy Museum, and made it possible for Serling's name to be further immortalized throughout town. It was Mike who would find lost radio recordings from the 1940s with Rod Serling in the cast. It was Mike who found rare drafts of Rod Serling teleplays, and it was Mike who reached out to the actors who appeared on The Twilight Zone to donate autographed photos for the Bundy Museum. It remains unlikely that anyone performed a greater effort to preserve the art and writings of Rod Serling. Besides the work of Rod Serling, Mike displayed an affection for the comedy of Jerry Lewis, was friends with the late Lloyd Bridges, and he never hesitated to share his personal stories of his friendships with them. Among his greater loves were kitty cats, gospel music, Laurel and Hardy, Liberace, Friar Roasts, Sergeant Bilko, and of course Rod Serling in The Twilight Zone. In 2013, at the Cinefest Film Festival in Syracuse, New York, Mike Pipher set up as a vendor alongside his good friend Kenny. During the evening hours one night, Mike discovered the hotel that hosted the festival had a piano in the lobby. Mike asked Kenny to wheel him over to the piano, and without advanced fanfare, began to play ragtime-style tunes. A crowd gathered as Mike played song after song, enjoying the tunes he played with his fingers. It was evident, Mike was a man of many talents. The next morning at the same festival, Mike was sharing photos from a photo album he brought to the event, past photos including his meeting with Burgess Meredith, Robert Cummings, and Earl Holliman, Twilight Zone alumni. It was evident that as far back as 1988, when he attended the ceremony for Rod Serling's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, that Mike was doing his part in preserving the legacy of Rod Serling. It stands to reason that every author who wrote a book about Rod Serling and or The Twilight Zone owes Mike Pipher a debt of gratitude. Mike never hesitated to share anything he had in his archive about Rod Serling to help aid in the cause of preservation. On many occasions, Mike used his influence to effect positive change, including encouraging youngsters to watch episodes of The Twilight Zone. Superb in his art and even more magnificent in his advocacy, Mike will forever serve as a shining example of humility and generosity. Mike was a gift that keeps the world believing in the power of humanity. Rod Serling, who have been proud to know, Mike lives by example, and we can take comfort knowing Mike and Rod are now sharing a beer together in the twilight, reminiscing about the good old days.
All right, that was very well done, and Martin did a great job writing that.
He certainly did.
Thank you, Solaris. Yep.
You're welcome.
That's why Martin is an esteemed author of many books on classic television and radio shows. Okay, Kenny, we have Kenny Korshnak here as well. Kenny, do you want to say something about Uncle Mike?
Yeah, he was my uncle, and he basically raised me from 3 months till he passed, and I helped him do everything at the shows. I helped him with the in the zones, and he's going to be sorely missed by a lot of people.
I think so too. Okay. Michael Weinstein, you are the volunteer owner of the Bundy Museum, where Mike and Kenny were frequently there. Can you explain a little bit about the importance of the Bundy and Mike's contribution to the Rod Serling archive that is housed in the Bundy?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Let me give you a little information for those people who would like to use their thumbs or whatever they use to access the Internet. If you'd like to find out more information about the Bundy Museum, it's actually the Bundy Museum of History and Art is the formal name, but you can just go to info@bundymuseum.org. That's info, I-N-F-O, the sign at, B-U-N-D-Y, Museum of History. Actually, sorry about that. Just info@bundymuseum.org. info@bundymuseum.org. And you can find out more about the Bundy. And it's not a question of tooting one's horn. In order to understand how important Michael was, I have to tell you about how important the museum was. And unfortunately, because I'm not a braggart, but I have to create a perspective and a context. So I've got to tell all of you that I'm the volunteer director, and I purchased the properties that the Bundy Museum is housed on. So although I don't own the museum, I do own the properties, and I rent the properties in question to the museum for $1 a year. The IRS requires me to charge something, so I charge $1 a year. I was a successful antique stealer. That's one of the ways, one of the pastimes that I had, one of the vocations that enabled me to meet and deal with Michael Pipher. So all that being said, Michael Pipher is the, I guess you can call him not just the facilitator, but in a sense the creator. But as Mark and others and Martin have pointed out, and Solaris, nothing occurs in a vacuum. We all need each other in order to move things forward. So much credit is due to the people who work at the museum and all the folks who have either attended events that we used to call In the Zone or Rod Serling Symposium, and different monikers, just to vary the public's interest and create new interest. And my message to everyone is go to the archive, the Rod Serling archive at the Bundy Museum. You just type in Rod Serling archive and you'll get to it on Google. And try to get a sense of what it is that Michael helped create and helped preserve. Uncle Mike, as we called him, because I'm Michael also. So we'll call him Uncle Mike. And some people know him as Grandpa Granite. That's his handle on the internet.
AOL.
And understand. And Kenny, no, I have a word to say about Kenny. And one reason that. Kenny has been very deferential. Kenny is just one of those people who his silence is a betrayal of his concern and the emotions he feels. And if you heard me earlier when I asked Kenny not to wander off in his comments, it's because I have literally almost a familial family relationship to Kenny, because Kenny grew up in a situation that he was an abused person as a child and also as an adult. Certainly not by Michael, but that's part of his family history. And I only share it not to embarrass Kenny, but so people understand. If I sound harsh towards him, it's only to keep him focused, because sometimes he loses focus. And we should understand that's something that Uncle Mike and I believe. The Serling aficionados, as well as Rod Serling, himself. Not that I have a right to speak for Rod Serling. I'm not an expert. But they were all concerned with people who had different abilities, people who had disabilities or people of different abilities. And that's one of the things that I champion. I myself had a strong role in the world of special needs for children, so I'm very sensitive to that. But one of the things that we all try to do is to keep people focused on message. And by the way, my staff does that to me because they say I talk too much. So Mark, I apologize if I'm talking too much. But please, people should interrupt with questions because I'd rather answer questions. As I said, this is not about me. I'm only a messenger here.
Okay, so Mike, what do you if people are going to be visiting the Bundy to study Rod's astonishing legacy? You have some replicas of say the masks from Eye of the mask.
Eye of the Beholder.
Eye of the Beholder.
We also have.
What else can they see?
Yeah. First of all, you can get some sense. I don't know right now, literally at this moment, if you can access the archive. I believe that anybody can on the internet because we've made it into a public space. But I myself don't access the archive because I go down to the archive. So in terms of checking on, what is the latest addition to the collection, or what can people see, or what can they focus on, we have literally hundreds, if not thousands, of items from the archive that are cataloged or accessioned into a collection that a lot of which I believe is available to the public. But as I said, because the museum, like many museums around the country, and this should be understood just in the context in which it's offered, that museums are suffering all over the country, and the Bundy Museum is no exception. And one of the pillars of the museum is certainly the Rod Serling Archive, but by extension, the archive is suffering from insufficient financial support. Now, that's not to put the burden on all the listeners. It's for people to understand that the cost of doing things in the past few years, anybody and everybody who goes to a gas station, goes to the grocery, knows that prices are sometimes nuts. And same thing with museums and businesses. The museum is a 501c3 nonprofit, and all the money that the museum raises goes towards either the operation or specifically to collections. We have a bank account that's dedicated to collections. So there are a number of ways that people can support us. You can send us photos. We don't necessarily need to own the item. You can send us photos. We can add it to the virtual collection of what we have. You can send us the items, loan us the items, even things that are people call them replicas, but replicas means that somebody's reproducing them even now. We try to buy things that were created to stand in for or be a substitute for some of the actual items, which, by the way, according to the ethics of museum operations, so we can allow people to handle some of these things. Some of these things we don't allow people to handle because they are one-of-a-kind items, but they can research them, as I said, through virtual access. So I know that sounds a little long-winded, but the best thing to do is just go on it, learn to navigate it. And as many of us who have some computer or some internet phobia, curse out the technology, but technology is a great benefit. It has great rewards, and it also has its detractions. So that's one of the ways that people can support us. Even just accessing, just knowing that there are people who are showing an interest, adds to the volume of and the numbers of people, which helps us garner support elsewhere. And when I say support, I'm talking about monetary support. But if you can't support us monetarily, visit. We don't charge to visit. We don't charge to visit the archive in person. certainly we ask for donations, but it's one of the parts of the museum, as is the case with many European museums. We would like them to be cultural centers, cultural malls that people feel comfortable visiting at any time. So that's, of course, with limited hours because of financial issues. Yeah, we ask that you contact us in advance, but you are certainly welcome to visit the museum, certainly visit the archive. And we've had people from Canada visit. So no matter how close or how far away you are, feel free to visit us, as I said, either online, virtually, or in person. But let us know, certainly, if you're planning a physical to be there in person. We'd love to have you. We'd love to meet you. Certainly seeing something in the flesh, so to speak, is much more impactful and really resonates with the collectors and the aficionados of the archive and of Rod Serling and Twilight Zone, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, and we have Reverend Rachel Schwab here with us. She has a question. I'm not sure to whom it's going to be addressed, but Rachel, ask your question.
Okay. I just have a question, Mike, about Uncle Mike's. How did he get started? I know he started as a volunteer at the Bundy, or at the archives, I guess, at the Bundy. But how did you know or can share some stories about how maybe the first time you met him or how you got to know him there or connected to him and how he got connected to the archives?
Yeah, and as many of you know, Michael, besides, his physical problems that he suffered, which eventually confined him to a wheelchair, just as a prelude or to preempt the importance of Michael to the show that Mark is doing, is that Michael extended his life thanks to the archive, and the archive was extended thanks to Michael. There was a symbiotic relation which only had to do with me because I was the originator of the museum. I wish I could tell you that I could take responsibility for that archive. I knew that Rod Serling was a native of Syracuse, born in Syracuse, and then became a native of Binghamton. And you guys probably know the history of that better than I do. I was certainly a fan of the Twilight Zone, but that was when I was in college and was only looking to pass the time so I could avoid doing a paper or studying. And
we've all been
never
there.
became... Yeah, I never became the ardent fanatic that a lot of people did. I actually became an ardent fan of Michael and of Rod Serling through Michael's education of the humanity of both of them, and that they were also very complex individuals. And that just struck me, especially as I matured and grew older and learned more tolerance in my waning years. It just came to appreciate these individuals who would have gotten along marvelously, but like families, they had their idiosyncrasies and they had their dysfunctions, the family dysfunctions. But that's part of the power and the strength of the relationships. And as I said, and I was mostly a witness. As far as how I met Michael, it was through the world of antiques. Michael was forced to sell a lot of his collection, and it was through an antique dealer named Luke. Some people know that history a little bit better than I did because I was an antiquer and I would shop the different stores. And because I knew that I wanted to have in the museum, I knew there should be, as far as Binghamton local history. Well, Rod Serling was a part of Binghamton local history, and our museum is a history museum, and because its primary purpose or original primary mission was to celebrate the creation or the predecessor company that eventually became IBM, International Business Machines, that history was not of a history that existed in a void. The history of IBM is tied up in much of the culture of Binghamton, And if you think about it, in a way, it's also tied to time machines, because the original manufacturer, called the Bundy Manufacturing Company, the original company of predecessor company of IBM, manufactured time clocks, time recording clocks. And when I learned that, it just hit me. What a great connection to Rod Serling. What a great connection to the Twilight Zone. A common subject matter among writers and creators, a subject of time and of history. So again, you guys know the episodes, and you can pull together those episodes. And so I started to research and gained enough knowledge to sound competent. But again, amongst all of the Serling files out there, I don't want to claim any competence, just some knowledge and a lot of appreciation. So I met Michael, as I said, through this antique dealer, and Michael and I connected, and we decided that originally the decision was we were going to try to create a museum, but there was a lot of pushback on that, understandably, not just from family members, but from some other foundation members, because people understandably are territorial. I mean, I love my museum and I love this territory that I created, but in no way, shape, or form was anybody looking to co-opt either the Serling legacy or Serling or the family or the foundation. And that has been stated for the record, and it's been stated to people like Nick Parisi and Andy Pollack, and it needs to be understood by people out there. We just want to help promote the legacy and help keep the legacy alive, and Michael did that for us, and we helped keep Michael alive. Michael said it many times, and it was a privilege. It was a privilege and an honor to hear that. It basically validated what we were doing, although there were, of course, lots of detours and trying to put on successful programs, linking up with the Rod Serling Fest, the annual fest that they had for a number of years, and those relationships sometimes waxed and waned, and sometimes they became closer together. We believe that in part because of Michael's passing, we believe that there's going to be more of a sense of community that we're going to try to promote. And despite differences in approaches, creative people, smart people, and Michael was incredibly creative. He has some incredible talents that he just developed on his own. I don't think he ever had a piano lesson. He was an amazing pianist. And he
Mr.
just
Weinstein,
was...
I do have to say something. He did have piano lessons. He did have his piano lessons.
Oh
yes.
Yeah, something I forgot. You told me that, but he didn't have a lot of lessons, and he could sit down and play a tune literally from his head. I think I'm correct in that, Kenny, right? Because he sat down sometimes with the Bundy, and he'd start playing something, and we said, Mike, where'd you learn it? And he'd say, oh, no, I'm just remembering a melody and just playing it. He had a natural ability. And of course, all creators. And we don't know what the seeds were. Certainly, Helen Foley was a seed and for Rod Serling, but we don't know actually. Read Ann Serling's book. She has a lot to say about the origin of her dad's creative abilities and amazing intelligence. She spells it out very nicely. And of course, as all daughters do, it's not a question of embellishment, but they regard their parents as regal, as people, people on a pedestal. And that's one thing about the statue that a lot of people don't understand. They say, why are we creating, or why did the foundation or whomever was involved with it, why are they creating a statue that's 7 feet tall? Well, anybody who has kids or is a kid knows that, parents appear at some point in their lives as being 7 feet tall. And so I think it's a very appropriate legacy for Rod Serling, what's being done as far as the statue. And if you haven't already shown support for that, by all means do so, because again, it helps everybody. It helps the archive, helps the placement of the statue, and the permanence of the legacy that that Binghamton deserves to be that home, if not second home after Syracuse, of the Serlings and the Serling family.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
And one thing I want to inject real quick, Mark, is if people do come to the museum to look at the archive, they will see a cookie jar there that says Twilight Zone all over it. It's black and white, and a photo of my uncle behind it, Uncle Mike. He is now in his final resting spot where he wanted to be, in the archive. And he told me that about a year before he died. If something happened, he wanted his ashes to be put in the archive. And we had a celebration of life for him this past Sunday, and we put him there for where he wanted to be by his final request.
Yeah, I don't know if Drew Russo is on the program. He might want to say something about it because he created that. It's sad but also laughable. Michael Drew created or formulated a cookie jar to house Michael's ashes. And though it sounds a bit morbid, Michael smiled as he talked about that's what he wanted. That is what Michael wanted, and we all tried to help with that, to honor his final wishes. Those were literally deathbed wishes that Michael had, because I spoke to him literally a day or two before he passed, and a number of people did. Michael spoke to a lot of people. He made a very strong effort both to reconcile and also to leave his positive feelings and positive mark on everybody, let alone the town itself, the town and the city of Binghamton. So it's a great honor for us. We're going to find an appropriate, secure place to put the cookie jar and the original cookie jar that inspired Michael to make that request, because there's an original cookie jar. We call it a slot machine cookie jar. And Kenny might know a little bit more about it. Drew Russo knows a little bit more about it and can tell you that story. And at some time we're going to get all of this hopefully recorded, including some of the the eulogies given tonight. We hope that we can get copies so we can print them up in a booklet form. And if there are copyright issues, we're happy to help deal with those. We are not looking to profit from that. We're looking to use it as a vehicle to help raise money specifically and totally dedicated to the archive.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
No, I was just wanted to bring the First Lady and Mr. Woohoo from Radio Once More, Helen and Johnny Holmes, on to provide their recollections of Uncle Mike. You worked with him on Radio Once More on a few interviews. Got to have breakfast together.
Yes, thank you, Mark, and hello, everyone.
Hello.
I'm John Holmes, and my wonderful wife,
Helen.
And we were very blessed to have Mike Pipher in our life. He's truly a wonderful man, very passionate about Rod Serling and his work, passionate about the Binghamton area, and we learned so much. We first met him, I believe it was in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was an event where we had Martin Grams there. Nick Parisi was there. We met Shelley there. We met some of the other gang there, as we call each other, and it was wonderful. And over the years, we attended many of the other events there at the Bundy prior to the Serling Fest. And when I got to know Mike and chat with him, and I told him how much I love classic TV, but I also love old-time radio. And he was kind enough to invite Helen and myself to do a presentation about old-time radio there at the Bundy. Since Rod Serling had a connection there, he actually won a writing contest submitting a script to Dr. Christian in his younger days, and he even as a youngster did a little bit of acting. And some of the recordings, that there's not too many available, but Mike was kind enough to share the recordings with us, and we were able to play those on Once More show. So when he invited us to do a presentation, we talked about what we should do, and I said, well, he's known for sci-fi and maybe creepy, scary stuff, so we did a scary show from a series called The Hall of Fantasy and a sci-fi related show from X-1, and he said he really enjoyed it, and it was a thrill just for Helen and I to be able to do a presentation in Binghamton, New York, the hometown of Rod Serling, and I really cherished that. I'm so glad he asked us to do it, and in fact, we got to do another one just last year at another get-together. And every year, as Mark said, before there's a Serling Fest, Helen and I decide to have kind of a special Rod Serling Twilight Zone themed radio show to kind of jumpstart the events at Serling Fest. And then Nick Parisi would come on and talk about what was planned, and Mike was always good enough to come on and talk about things at the Bundy and share his stories. And that's the one thing I will definitely miss. Mike Pipher's stories. He could just go on and tell the most interesting, wonderful stories. And I'm so happy that I do have some recordings, and I particularly enjoyed when he talked about one of the times when Rod Serling came back to Binghamton, and when Mike got to meet him, and he was telling the story about all the young college students around and chatting with him. And it was just told so well by Mike, and I'm glad I have to dig that recording out because I definitely want to play that again, maybe later on this year on radio once more. So I'm really just touched by a wonderful person that Mike was, and I'll never forget him.
He always made us feel welcome when we were at the Bundy Museum, at the archive. Always wanting to know what we were doing, what plans we had, when can we come back again. And he was always very hospitable, and we'll miss him a lot.
Definitely.
Okay, and let's bring Shelley on for some of her reflections. Shelley Young is a member of the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation. She's a board member. So, Shelley, can you tell us a little bit about your interactions with Mike?
Sure. Hello, everybody. So I am sort of the social media lady for the foundation, and I usually do all the promoting, and I contacted all the groups, and we're like a big family of Twilight Zone fans, of Rod Serling fans on there. And before 2007, I had no idea that there were others like myself out there who were big fans of Rod Serling. Like, Facebook really opened things up for me, and that's how I met Mike and several of the others that are on the show today, is because in the Zone, his program that was at the Bundy at the Rod Serling Archive, like, I had found it and I was just floored. I had no idea that these things even existed, because I live in Canada, and before the internet, I had no clue that there was even like get-togethers or things like that in like Rod Serling's name or Twilight Zone's name, whatever. So In the Zone came out, and it was 2015. That's where I met Johnny and Helen. I happened to go down there for the event with my mother and my two young daughters at the time. And I came in and I sat down. I didn't know anybody, but by the end of the event, like, we were all friendly, talking, whatever. Mm-hmm. And that was where I met Mike, of course. And after the event was over, we gathered in the archive where all the things are. And I sat there totally fascinated by everything he had to say. Like, I was just so happy to find somebody who actually knew Rod, who had all these experiences with the Twilight Zone alumni. Like, he knew the people. He had stories about everything, like Johnny and Helen were just saying. Like, I could sit and listen to him talk about all these things for hours, and I didn't know how much time had passed, but I didn't get home that night until at least 11, 12 o'clock. I was so happy to get to know him and then get to know the community. And we've all become very close, the people who come to the archive. We make a plan to come and we all meet together, and it's a family. It truly is a family. And I think, as like Michael Weinstein was saying, it did breathe new life into him having the archive. I didn't know him prior to this, so I can't say for sure, but I know he really loved having all of us come together. He planned everything. Like, he would call me up ahead of these events and say, hey, this is what I've got planned. What do you think? You know, or he would ask for my input, and I would tell him, yeah, I like that, or maybe do this, or whatever. He always open to input, and he aimed to please. Like, he was so happy to have all of us come together. We were his extended family. You know, he wasn't my uncle, but I have to tell you, the reason why he and I bonded so well is because I have an uncle who I lost when I was 19. His name was Marvin. And if you looked at pictures, you would swear that they're one and the same person. And it never clued into me until I think after one of the Serling Fests, I was on my way home, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. This is the connection that I've made with him. I remember my uncle, and they were so similar, and it was familiar. That's why we became so close. So he called me like his sister, who he had lost and loved very much, but I guess I kind of assumed that role in his life too. So we were very close like that. Kenny can attest to that. Kenny calls me up now, and we chit chat all the time, and you know, it's a family. It really truly is a family, and he will be missed for sure. Yep.
Like I said to Shelley and at my uncle's funeral, that Uncle Mike said he was her favorite Canuck. She was like, huh?
So I was his favorite Canuck?
Yep.
One thing I want to say, though, is there was some things about him that I learned at his funeral that I did not know before. Like, we were sort of talking earlier about how he was a talented piano player. I did not realize that he was mostly self-taught. He may have had lessons, I don't know that for sure, but he was also a tuba player. I had no clue that this was a thing in his life at all. One of his cousins spoke about that at the funeral, so I was like, wow, that's pretty awesome. Never knew that before. I also didn't know that he would perform in costume at local nursing homes and entertain the seniors in residence there. And I mean, knowing who he was and how kind and generous he is, you know, with his time, like, that doesn't surprise me at all. Like, I was really touched to hear that. I thought, how special is that he would give his time to do that. And he loved singing. He loved his gospel music, and he actually gave me a CD of music to enjoy. And I hadn't listened to it very much, but I played it after he passed away, and I sat there and I was so proud of him, and like, it made me cry. Very, very touching. So,
and Solaris, you know, we did at least a couple interviews on an open canvas, and then you know, had Mike on, hyperspace numerous times. So what? I know Mike really enjoyed Tina Marie as well. So what are your memories of working with Mike, and what you take away from those experiences?
Oh gosh, he was on our show quite a bit, and I must say it was such a beautiful experience every time. Just high energy, loving, beautiful soul, and he was so excited to discuss anything connected to Rod Serling. all the different stories, all the episodes. And it's just a fascinating 2 hours. You know, we just sit there and absorb it all, and then afterwards we talk a little bit. I must say he was just like a kindred spirit. I mean, he is, even if you didn't really know him that well, you just knew him at the soul spirit level. At least that's the way it felt to us, and we really did adore him and really loved him. And I miss him terribly. It was an honor to interview him with his knowledge of information connected to Rod Serling, and I'll never forget him. I was just so happy he was around, and he is in a different formula. And I must say, I love the idea of his ashes being over there at the museum because he loved it there. You know, I think that's something he probably really, really did want. So that made me smile when I heard that, and I'm really happy about it. But he'll forever be in my heart and spirit, and we love him, and I know my audience loved him. And I have archives. If anybody wants any, I'm happy to send them over for the show.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, we would like to, once we get through any of the, the legal issues, we would love to be able to print out a hard copy. Michael was working on something, and Kenny is going to be working with one of our curators and one of our directors who worked intimately with Michael to curate the exhibits that we had that went along with the presentations. We would also change up the exhibits, the Rod Serling, Twilight Zone, Night Gallery, anything that had to do with Rod Serling's creativity and creative, his vast production talent of writing, producing, and so on. And so we're lucky to have. That's another person behind the scenes that doesn't like to be credited publicly, but just so you know that there is somebody he's a professional, both a professional curator and studied art professionally, and has done, especially Michael and he just. It took them maybe a couple of years or a couple of months, and just watching them work together was amazing. A very, very special relationship there, and that part of the relationship will continue. And so that curator is basically a permanent member of the whole Bundy family and the museum family. And you can learn a little bit more about him. As I said, he's like many artists. He's not as interested in the publicity as just people enjoying his artistic talent, which is curating many types of exhibits, but especially the exhibits that Uncle Mike would want him to work on. So they were an amazing pair. And as I said, the importance of gathering together the different media, especially the spoken media, so we can put it into print form and use appropriate illustrations, things that we know we are allowed to print. Also, being a museum, it's part of our mission to do that type of thing, especially because literally all of the proceeds, not just the profits, but all of the proceeds are going to be plowed back into the archive itself, including our costs, the museum costs of producing, printing, and so on and so forth. So it's not just, as you see with many corporations, they say a portion of the profits. No, it's not just a portion of the profits. It's all the profits, and all the costs are going back into the archive. So as I said, any help, whether it's cultural capital, the spoken capital that or actual money or artifacts. This is the job of a museum. That's what museums are supposed to be doing, and we try to live up to that to a very high degree. We try to maintain a very high standard in that respect.
Okay, and a related question to what Mike brought up about printing things at the museum. For people out of town who've been up to visit, like Shelley, Helen, and Johnny, me, Rachel. There have been these the Rod Serling archive pamphlet that was at the museum when I was there in 2019, where you can walk around the streets of Binghamton, find where some of the buildings may have been referenced in the episodes, or might have been like a prototype of something incorporated into an episode. For example, you get the carousel and bandstand at Recreation Park, and that was used at the end of Walking Distance. Helen, Johnny, Rachel, Shelley, did you see those maps, or did you when you were able to drive around town and go to some of these locations, what did that do for you as a old-time, radio, classic TV and radio aficionado, seeing, the childhood home of Rod's? What did you get those maps, or at least make the trips around town?
When Johnny and I were up there for one of the Sterling Fest events, we got the map and we drove to, and Johnny, you can help me with the show titles, where the bus stop was in the Twilight Zone episode.
Mirror Image.
The Doppelgangers.
Yeah, I forget.
Okay, you forgot already. Well, the bus stop is there from that Twilight Zone show. We drove by a few of Rod Serling's houses that are listed on the map, and also Mike showed us some extra houses that he knew that Rod had, lived in at one time or another in Binghamton. They talked about the department store where the mannequin episode was.
Oh, from the after.
That
was part of the inspiration for the after hours.
Yeah, all these places in Binghamton were inspiration for Rod for a lot of his TV shows for the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, that was Boscov's department store.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for the After Hours episode.
Yeah, originally during Rod's time, it was called the Fair Store, I believe. And what Michael did, especially in recent months and certainly recent years, is he added a lot to that map, and we gave a lot of that information to the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation, and they published the map. So you may be able to find perhaps the most updated one on the Rod Serling Memorial Foundation site. I'm not sure because I haven't checked it out personally, but I know that we talked about it, and we talked about them utilizing that, and all we were asking was that they give credit to, obvious credit to Michael Pipher and the Bundy Museum archive, the Rod Serling Memorial Archive. And that's what we were asking for in terms of support, because the more that people know that all of these agencies are trying to help each other out in terms of preserving and perpetuating the legacy and sustaining the legacy, so the better it is for everybody. So yeah, check it out. If you don't find it on our site, apologies. We'll get it up certainly before the Rod Serling Fest that's going to take place towards the end of the summer, and maybe even sooner than that.
Yeah, I know we're planning to do another In the Zone, hopefully the 12th, but possibly the 13th when Sterling Fest is supposed to start. We're hammering out details for that.
Yeah, Sterling Fest is supposed to happen the 13th of September to the to the 15th. So it's partly at the Forum Theater on the Friday and Saturday, and then on the Sunday there's a statue dedication ceremony planned at Binghamton's Recreation Park, and that part of it is open to the public. And there may be more. I don't know. We're still working on the details for Sunday, but as it stands right now, that's the plan. So.
Yeah, and there's something I wanted to say about Rec Park and the bandstand. Right in the middle of the bandstand in the ground, when Uncle Mike became the first president of the Rod Serling Foundation, he had that little plaque put in the middle of the bandstand saying Rod Serling's walking distance.
Oh, wow. That's great.
My uncle was instrumental in getting that done.
Yeah, he was very instrumental. He was very proud of his accomplishments with the foundation. I know that he was involved with a celebrity auction, as we kind of talked about, in the Hollywood Walk of Fame ceremony. I know he was there for that, and I believe he was partly involved with the Rod Serling Film Festival because he had amassed such a large collection of films and the reels, so that was how that became a thing, and he was the driving force behind the first few. I know he was also involved in the Binghamton Walk of Fame project. I believe the star is now at the Forum Theater, if I'm not mistaken, and he was also on the committee to get Rod Serling's first postage stamp. There may have been more, but I know that those are the ones that stand out.
And if I remember right, Shelley, you or Nick had told me that the foundation did a thin tribute for Uncle Mike on your website.
Yes, some of us who had some tributes of our own, we shared those, and they have put up a page with those on the website. And there will be in memoriam featured in the next Rod Serling Memorial Foundation newsletter coming up. I'm not sure exactly when it's coming out, but it should be soon.
And I think we're going to have Nick calling in here shortly. He's wrapping up something and should be coming in. But I think one of the lasting legacies that Mike left on me was looking, watching the episodes and seeing the spirituality behind many of the episodes. I think that's why it seems like like Reverend Rachel was there and talking with her in depth. Helen and Johnny. I think they probably would agree with that as well. It just seems like there were Rod exuded an interest. It portrayed spirituality that pulled people into the episodes, and helped you to develop a sense of empathy, wanting to make the world a better place. And I think with talks, setting up an interview for Mike or whatever, just in regular calls, our discussions were pretty much like that as well, and I think the listeners would get that impression from what everyone has said. So, it's some of the impact that Uncle Mike left on me. And I think we have Nick joining us now, and Nick Parisi has been mentioned by several of the guests tonight, and Nick is the author of just an astonishing biography, Rod Serling, his life, work, and imagination. Nick, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Mark. Nice to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. You've got a nice crowd of friends here. So, okay, so we're just so glad you were able to take time out of your busy schedule and call in. How did Mike and or the Bundy archive help you with putting together your amazing biography, or furthering your interest in Rod? What how were you impacted by Mike's scholarship?
Sure. Well, I contacted Mike Pipher pretty early on in the process of writing my book. I'm not sure exactly how far into it I was, but I reached out to him because I was interested in the archive, and I had at that time I actually had a pretty rare film, a 16mm film that I was willing to donate to the Bundy Museum, and so I reached out to him, and he was thrilled to talk to somebody who shared his passion for Rod Serling and his interest in Rod Serling, and I think I very quickly made plans to take the drive up to Binghamton. I live on Long Island, so I'm about a 4-hour drive from Binghamton, and so Mike was the first person in Binghamton that I met. The first time I went up there, I met him at the Bundy Museum, and I've said it before, but he greeted me like he had known me my whole our whole lives. He greeted me like a lifelong friend, and he was my first Binghamton tour guide. So he was the one. He and Kenny, they were the ones who took me around Binghamton and showed me all the sites, all the Serling related sites. They took me to Rec Park. They took me to the high school, and the Walk of Fame at the Forum, and and various locations, and that began a friendship. That was the beginning of it, and from that point, I think Mike was surprised at some of the videos that I had some things on DVD that he did not have and he didn't know existed, and same for him. He had a bunch of things that I didn't have, so we basically just kind of started trading and made sure that each of us had exactly what the other one had. So eventually, it just expanded our collections, and that helped me in the writing of the book tremendously, because there were certain things that I didn't have, and part of the idea of my book was to be a complete record of every single thing that Rod Serling had written, and so seeing some of these things was tremendously helpful. Again, we became friends. Mike was the one who. He really gave me the first opportunity to talk about the book long before it was published. I did a little presentation at the Bundy Museum, and it was covered by the local press, and that was the first press that I got for my book, and it was before it was even published. So I had Mike to thank for that, and he was generous in that way. He loved to indulge anybody who had this interest in Rod Serling, and he So he was more than happy to give me that platform at the Bundy and to be able to talk to people and to go on the Bundy radio station and other things that we did together. We did plenty of shows, podcasts together. He presented at least one Serling Fest, and so Mike was a good guy. He was a generous guy. He was a kind-hearted guy, and he really he did a lot for me.
Okay, and what are you working on for the Serling Fest this year?
Well, a whole bunch of things. I'm still going back and forth with all the powers that be on how exactly we're organizing the statue unveiling, because we are going to be unveiling a statue of Rod Serling in Binghamton Recreation Park this year. It'll certainly be up in time for Serling Fest on September 13th, 14th, and 15th. And the 15th, we're planning that to be the day that we're all in Recreation Park, and we do the unveiling of the brickwork around the statue and the actual, and the dedication ceremony. So we'll have Rod's daughters will be there to say a few words, and some local politicians. Donald Lapardo, who helped us tremendously in getting this project done, she'll be there. So the idea for Serling Fest is the Friday night, Friday, September 13th, we will be at the Forum Theater, and that will be from 6 to 10. And that night will be dedicated to a Rod Serling Film Festival. So we're still deciding on what to show, but we'll be showing some rare Serling shows, certainly a couple of Twilight Zone episodes, but at least a few things that I would pretty much guarantee that nobody has seen who's going to be there. So that'll be the Friday night. And then on Saturday, it'll be an all-day thing from 10 a.m. until 8 p.m. where we do presentations, we do a raffle, we do trivia, we do all sorts of things, and we have a nice list of guests that are going to be there, and we're still working on the guest list. We're still waiting on a few people, but right now, Mark Zickery will be there. He's the author of the Twilight Zone Companion. Corin Shadme will be there. He's the author and artist of Twilight Man, a Rod Serling graphic novel. Mark Olshaker will be there. Mark DeWidziak will be there. I'll be there. Ann Serling, of course, will be there. So I say this every year, but even this year, I think it's even more so than past years. It's the greatest collection of Rod Serling experts that you could ever imagine in one place. So that will be all day Saturday, and then, like I said, on Sunday we'll be at Rec Park for the unveiling and all of that. So it's really going to be a great weekend.
Well, sounds great, and Amy Johnston has done some amazing archive work as well in her book Unknown Serling. Just a lot of so many talented people are associated with the foundation.
Yeah, and people who are dedicated to this mission of promoting Rod Serling's work and promoting Rod Serling's message and his legacy. Amy Brewer Johnston wrote Unknown Serling. She will unfortunately only be with us for Friday night for the film festival. Tony Albarella will be with us. He's the one who put together the Timeless of Infinity script books of Rod Serling, Twilight Zone script books. He'll be with us all 3 days. And I'm trying to think if I forgot anybody else on our list. I'm not sure. We're still, like I said, we're still waiting on a couple of others that we're hoping can make it. And actually, tickets are now officially on sale. So if you go to rodserling.com, you will be able to buy tickets. It's $35 for the whole weekend, or it'll be $20 a day at the door. So you'll save $5 if you buy the tickets in advance through the website. So rodserling.com.
Okay, and I'm still hoping that Scott Skelton will call in, but he's has a terrific book on the Night Gallery. It's entitled Rod Serling's Night Gallery and After Hours Tour. He's been a speaker. Nick, what do you think of Scott's book? Hopefully, give him a quick plug if he isn't able to get off work and call in.
No, I'd be happy to. Scott Skelton and Jim Benson, they co-wrote the Night Gallery book. I mean, Rod Serling's Night Gallery and After Hours Tour was released. I'm not sure exactly when it was first released, but they just recently released an anniversary edition of it, which has to be almost twice as long as the original, with full color pictures, and it's just an amazing piece of work. The Night Gallery. If you're into Night Gallery, it's an absolute must-have. It's the Night Gallery Bible, they did an amazing job, and Scott was tremendously helpful with my book when it came to the Night Gallery, the chapter on the Night Gallery. I was able to talk to him for a while and fill in some gaps and give me some insight on certain things. They've been at prior Serling Fests, and we actually are still waiting to hear back from him about this year's Serling Fest. I honestly don't think he's going to make it, but I'm hoping maybe he will surprise us and maybe he'll be there.
Okay, yeah. I know Johnny and Helen have a copy of Scott's book, and they've one time when we were talking, they also highly praised it as well.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, it's no hyperbole. It's a really amazing piece of work.
I think I threw my back out picking it up.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's a heavy book, the new one anyway. Yeah.
Okay. Let's. Nick, you brought up a couple new things that you discovered in an archive when Martin was a guest with us. He was talking about going to Akron, Ohio, to the Goodyear Rubber Company for some of the archives of it was like the Shadow or the Lone Ranger. It was like one of those radio shows, and I was sitting there listening to him talk, and it's like, why are you there? What does Goodyear have to do with these archives? And he explained, they were the producers of those early radio shows. You've had to go to numerous unusual archives for your biography. Where else have you gone to have to find some of these documents that you thought were imperative to include in your biography of Rod?
Yeah, I mean, that was just a huge part of the process. I actually just this past weekend, I was at a convention called Ithacon at Ithaca College, and Ithaca College has one of the Rod Serling archives, and Rod taught at Ithaca College for several years, and he donated a lot of things to Ithaca College, so they have a tremendous archive of stuff that I am still going through, even after the book has been published and everything. I'm still going through it and still finding things. In fact, I'll have an article in our newsletter coming up about some of the new things I found in there. So that's one of them. But the main one is in Wisconsin, at the Wisconsin Historical Society. I spent days there going through their stuff, and the other one is at UCLA, the UCLA Film and Television television archives. They have a tremendous amount of stuff as well. So Rod's materials are kind of spread out between 3 main archives. And then I did go to a few other places. I went to Antioch College, where he went to college. They have some things there. I went to Princeton University. They actually had a few scripts there for some reason, and I actually found something pretty valuable there. So yeah, I was all over the place. And so that's part of the fun, actually. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So someone like Rachel Solaris, do you have any questions for anyone? Just want to give chance for someone to.
I just had a comment real quick here. This is Solaris.
Okay.
Hi. I was just thinking Friday the 13th. How auspicious. You're having this 13th, 14th, and 15th, right? Yeah. So I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah. Did you plan that?
Yeah. You're not the first person to mention that. Yeah, the Sterling Fest is going to open on Friday the 13th. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just bought my ticket, Nick. So I'm while we're talking here. So I'm on my way. I'll be there.
Excellent. All
this is Rachel. Yeah.
All right. Well, you're one of the first ones to get a ticket. That's great.
There you go. Do I get a prize? No, I don't. Well, I can't. I tell you, Serling, really talk about a family feeling. I like Shelley, felt the same way when I first found out that there was a Serling Fest. I mean, I have been a Twilight Zone fan since I was a child. Or I should say probably a teenager, not a child, but it really was amazing. The first person that I met when I came in the door beside Shelley was Mike, Uncle Mike. And, he was all ready to go. He was telling stories when I came in, and, I went up to him afterwards just because he had such a spirit about him, and I think I felt connected to him. I think Solaris said at a soul spirit level, that kind of feeling you get when you were around him. We, as a pastor for 25 years, I mean, we had some things to share about faith. He and I had some different opinions, but we also joined together when it came to singing. And, I told him, I said, well, if we meet again, that, I'd like to sing with him. And he was like, really? Just because I really enjoyed, we would talk about the gospel songs and how I grew up on that kind of thing. And so, I think of him, carrying his voice, so to speak, through all of the stories that I just keep hearing them replaying in my mind, and music in my mind that he probably would be enjoying now. And it just really does my heart good, because his knowledge just really inspired me, and also he was just very laid back, and I felt that the first time when I met him that day at Serling Fest in 2019, it said, okay, I'm home. I felt like, okay, now these are my people that I can get along with. And it was great for me because I've always had such a connection to Twilight Zone, and I think all of us come together for that. And I think Uncle Mike was one of those people that brought us together in that way too, along with everyone else. But it just made it extra special. So being able to come together again for another Serling Fest, it's full circle for me. So. So just continuing the connections that we have is really important.
Yeah, well, it's well said. I mean, I've always felt that way, that Serling Fest is like a family gathering. We all kind of feel like we know each other, even if we haven't met. It's just that way. And Mike was a big part of that.
Mm-hmm. It makes a huge difference when you find others like yourself You're like kindred spirits, you know. You all
Right.
have the same love for this show and for Rod, and it brought us all together, and you know, it's such a strong bond.
Yeah.
Shelley, is the Twilight Zone as popular in Canada as it has been in America? Is it finding a new audience?
Well, I mean, first of all, when I started watching, I was like maybe 9, 10, and that was a big influence of my mother. She used to watch it on TV and reruns. Of course, she had the original run, which I'm totally jealous of. But we used to have to wait till like in the wee hours of the morning to see it though in rerun. So I was just I happened to be lucky that as a child growing up, like I would come home at lunch and she'd have a TV on, and the first memory that I have of watching is the Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, and I was sitting at the table on a little tiny TV watching this, and I was totally engrossed in it, and it just blew my mind, and I had to see more, and that was the beginning of a lifelong love of the show. You know, like I ended up ordering the VHS cassettes through the mail, paying for them with my own money that I had, you know, worked at the drugstore to get. And it was, every time I would get a new VHS cassette, I would hunker down in my bedroom, tell everybody to leave me alone. I need to watch. I mean, Canada, they do show Twilight Zone, and I know with the newest series they had it on, and they actually aired it for free. We didn't have to have a online service or streaming service to view it, which was wonderful. I got to see it a little bit late than, you know, others, but at least I got to see it. I didn't have to pay for it, which was a bonus. But yeah, I know that there's lots of us out there here, but I think they're more spread out. I'm still trying to track them down. I do have like a Facebook page that's dedicated to the Canadian fans, and it's slowly growing. I only have 200 people on there so far, but in time I'm going to grow it some more. There have been a couple of Twilight Zone related events in Toronto, and I was able to attend. It was like a film festival kind of thing where they were celebrating Rod's birthday. It was the Christmas thing in the snow, and I got to meet up with some other Canadian fans that were attending there, so that was pretty cool. And actually, I met Rod Serling at the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto, where she was giving a speech for the Toronto, oh my goodness, I forget the proper name, but it's the Jewish Toronto International Film Festival sort of thing. And she was there giving a talk about Rod, and when I found out, my husband did everything in his power to get me a ticket so I could go, and he said he came home and watched the kids so I could drive down to Toronto. I was just totally fangirling over meeting Rod Serling. It was wonderful. So it does happen periodically. There are things that happen in Ontario specifically. I don't know about the other provinces, but I would love to see us all come together up here on Canadian soil and have some sort of event up here. But that's going to be, you know, we'll have to talk more about that. But
Shelley, you mentioned, you know, okay, you get, you know, some interest in Canada, and there's you know, interest abroad. Well, you know, Tom Elliott has done, you know, a bunch of interviews with, you know, so many authors, writing on the Twilight Zone. You know, Tom was at the 2019 one.
He's actually planning on coming to this next one as well.
Yeah, from England. He seems to have very decent English following. Does Nick or someone, if you're talking with Tom, what have you gotten any feedback on how people in the British Isles have been receiving this over 60-year-old show?
I think in Tom's case, he's probably in the same boat as I am. I think it was a well after midnight shown program, and he would have to stay up quite late to view it. I don't know if there's a huge following over there. He may have spoken on that once or twice before, but honestly, I'm not 100% sure. But his podcast, I know that there's people from all over who listen in, specifically several from the United States. I know that for sure. And there is one fellow, he is in Ireland, and he's planning on coming to Serling Fest this year. There's actually another person coming in from Brazil. He's not a part of the podcast, but he's a part of the Facebook groups. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nice to see that there's an international following. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
so
yeah. Absolutely.
Legacy continues to expand is basically what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
I think the following is growing. I know there's a huge following in the United States, but I think in other places it's growing more, and people are learning about the foundation. People are learning about even the archive at the Bundy. Like it's once we find each other, it helps the circle grow larger of the family kind of thing.
Right.
I call it a family.
Agree.
I believe in it. I think it's a family, 100%.
Sorry. I think it's
okay
too that that now Twilight Zone is you can stream it. So that from an international standpoint, I think that I don't know how internationally like some of the other streaming services that we use here in the U.S. are, but how similar they are with what they offer. But it seems to have really opened up and brought because I can watch things from other countries, which is great, movies and things that I might not typically be able to see. And then to be able to watch Twilight Zone in other countries, I think is much more accessible. So that makes it, I think, wonderful and building more of a community. So that's good.
Okay. And Johnny and Helen, you might have touched on a little earlier, but when people tune into radio once more, you're archiving entertainment. It goes back, 70 years. Lydia the Tattoo Lady is one of the songs. I remember you playing, in more of the Groucho Marx legacy. But since you deal with that nostalgia on such a regular basis, do you find that there is a growing market for entertainment from the past? Because I enjoy what you do.
In some aspects, I would say yes. Seems like I know this has been brought up at past Serling Fest. Twilight Zone seems to be growing. I Love Lucy seems to be growing. A few of the others. Unfortunately, I would say some of the shows maybe not so much. And certainly with what we do on old time radio, or we'll do on Radio Once More, the old time radio. I think that fan base is unfortunately just shrinking little by little every year. Because you talk to the young folks about old-time radio, and they say, "I don't get it. How do you see it?" And I said,
they don't even know what a radio is now.
Yeah, I said you see it in your mind, and it's a tough concept if you don't understand. But that's what they did before television. But there is still a small but very dedicated, passionate group that enjoys old-time radio and nostalgia that way, and it's very prevalent in the blind community. Over the years that Helen and I have been doing this, we've made so many wonderful blind friends out there that enjoy old-time radio, and just obviously it makes sense. And when you were talking about the streaming the episodes of the Twilight Zone, just so you know, there is a website, I believe it's called audiovault.net, and they have classic TV episodes and films with audio description. And I think I did see season 1 of the Twilight Zone with audio description. So if you know anyone that has or they're visually impaired, and this might be an avenue for them to, not only do they hear the soundtrack, but there's a little added description. I know the entire Star Trek series is there, and many others.
Oh, wow.
So that's just a little piece of information you can pass on to anyone you may know that is visually impaired.
Yeah.
What was the website again?
I believe it was audiovault.net. I could double check that later on. And there's no charge. It's totally nonprofit. They do accept donations if people want to help out.
Okay. What since like I said at the intro of the show, so many of the Nightlight shows deal with things mainly way back in time, different mysteries. I think radio once more just kind of keeps history alive, and when you're taking requests,
I totally agree that it's not only is it history in a sense of that's how we got our entertainment and our news and everything back before television. So from that standpoint, it's historical, but also it's an art form. Also, when the radio plays are differently done than plays on stage or films or television productions, it's done in such a way that they provide all the sounds, the dialogue, the sound effects, and your mind does the rest. So you're more active in the process. You're hearing the descriptions. You pay attention and closer to the dialogue, and it becomes you're really more active. You don't just sit back in a chair and vegetate. You're really listening, and you're part of the process. But when the half-hour show is over, I think it's a very gratifying experience when it's done. You were a big part of it. You go, wow, that was a great episode, and it's quite enjoyable. And I picked it up back when I was in high school, and I still love it. I mean, I still love television. Twilight Zone is still my favorite show of all time, but it's nice. And there's no doubt Rod Serling was influenced, I'm sure, when he was young from radio and from his early involvement in radio. So I think it all kind of works together, and I love it. Brings me joy every day.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's Johnny. You just touched on one of the points. I think Martin Grams makes in his Twilight Zone book, as well as he has a book on the Green Hornet and the Lone Ranger, is a lot of those people who made a name for themselves in radio had a successful transition to TV and or movies, and some of them ended up appearing in Twilight Zone episodes. Orson Welles was almost, Nick could tell us about that. Orson Welles, went from what the first season of The Shadow to almost being the host of the Twilight Zone. Is that right, Nick?
He was considered, yeah. He was certainly considered, and CBS had the idea that maybe he would fit, but it really never got past the idea stage, really. And Rod really did want to be the host of the Twilight Zone, and I think he kind of made that happen. He certainly had the power to make that happen. But they did consider Orson Welles for a time.
Okay, and I feel so dumb now. Who was the actress in the silent episode with the spaceships at the end?
Agnes Moorehead.
Yes, thank you.
Agnes Moorehead.
She Martin spoke about her being in The Shadow, and she was in.
She was big in radio. She made numerous appearances on the series Suspense, and some excellent episodes. And I totally recommend, if you folks are not too familiar with it, look up the Suspense episode, Sorry, Wrong Number. And she had a tremendous, powerful performance in that episode. And it keeps you on the edge of the seat throughout the entire episode.
Sorry, wrong number. Okay, I'm jotting that one down. John, you play some of the Vincent Price ones, for your Halloween shows.
Yes, the one that I recommended to you, that I recommend to everyone, Three Skeleton Key, and the best, because this script was done numerous times over the years on both Suspense and Escape, but I would recommend the Vincent Price Three Skeleton Key that was on the series Escape. And I think it aired, I'm not exact, I'm thinking it was like St. Patrick's Day in maybe 1950, somewhere around there. But that's an unbelievable episode, and you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, that one really stuck out for me. Okay, let's see. Kenny, Michael, Solaris, we haven't heard from you three for a couple minutes. Is there anything you want to chime in with? Of all kinds
I'll
of
jump
things we get.
Go ahead, guys.
I'll jump in just with some more information about radio. We should not be we should not prematurely mourn the death of radio. Those of you who subscribe to Sirius Radio, people like Howard Stern, whether you like him or not, he's played a big role in the revival of radio and the revival of young people's interest in radio for many different reasons. It's just seen as another form of expression where there might be the free exercise of free speech. And that was one of the first bastions of free speech for the public, where the public could listen in and eventually participate. And Rod, of course, was a part of that with WINR. in Binghamton, and the Bundy Museum a number of years ago recently applied for and received an FCC license to have a nonprofit community station. So, and you can access that station through the call letters for the Bundy radio station, which is WBDY 99.5 on the FM dial. But if you just go to WBDY Community Radio or the radio station at the Bundy Museum, you'll find it on the Internet. The station broadcasts locally, but also it streams. So if you're interested in seeing some of the programs that have been archived, most of them, of course, are not necessarily programs that featured Michael Pipher, but some of them did. And you can find those on a site called SoundCloud. I'm not sure if it's soundcloud.org, but if you look up SoundCloud, you'll find archived radio stations, and particularly for all these community stations around the country, all these nonprofit community stations around the country. And there's a growing interest in those. We, although we can't afford the Nielsen reports, but we do get reports about listenership, and we find that listenership does increase. Plus, also people sign on to help support it, just like public radio, NPR, public radio. You can sign on to a platform called Patreon, spelled like it sounds, Patreon. If you'd like to help by subscribing, you can subscribe, I think, for as little as $5 a month, to the Bundy station, and Patreon probably also is a platform for other stations. But there's a vast array of revival. I call it revival radio, and I think that Michael Pipher and Martin and Reverend and Helen, all these folks are helping to fuel the growth, even though you might be seeing some drop in your own listenership. Overall, I believe very strongly that there is a growing interest in radio, and and this is something where people who can't necessarily travel, they can access from almost anywhere, and that right. That as technology advances, you're going to be hearing and being able to see through artificial intelligence lots of things developing in the coming years and decades. So more power to everybody, and people who are literally at the forefront. People like Nick Parisi is just at the forefront of all this. Nick, how you juggle all these variables, I don't know, but just informing us, and meaning everyone here, about these additional archives that are out there. Just so you recall, not that the Bundy archive is any different, better, or worse than any of these other archives, but the Bundy archive is the one that is usually open to the public, as I said, on a continuing basis, and you don't need special permission to get in, as with some of the university archives. And I've been to some of those archives. They're great. They're magnificent. And by all means, if you have the means to visit them, visit the universities, and especially Rod Serling's alma mater, Antioch, they are great places, and should be a stop on your tour of Rod Serling, Twilight Zone, Night Gallery related stops. So again, thanks for hearing me out, and thanks for your interest and participation. And by all means, you can contact us through Mark and through the Bundy any way you like, and we will try to respond to you as fortuitously and as quickly as possible. You guys have a good night. I'll hang out. If there are more questions, as I said, you can also text me. I don't know, Mark, if it's okay to give out a telephone number for text. Do you allow for that?
Yeah, you could do that.
Okay. So if people want to reach me directly, they can text me. I have a smartphone, and they can text me at 607-222-8255. 0921. But I'm not necessarily the best person to text if you have questions in general about Michael Pipher or about the Serling archive. But you're welcome to text me if you want to learn more about the museum. Also, you can also contact the Bundy directly. They also have a phone number, and that telephone number is 607-772-9179. Again, it was great hearing from all of you, and thanks for allowing me the opportunity also and the privilege of joining with you.
No, we really appreciated your insights, Mike. And we still have about 13 minutes left in this celebration, and while looking at the map of Binghamton and all the different places that people can stop and see the carousel or Rod's childhood home on 67 Bennett Avenue. There's also the Rod's gravesite. Nick, you've been there. How far is that outside of Binghamton? Can you describe the cemetery as a place where people can stop and pay their respects?
Yeah, it's Interlaken Cemetery, and it's essentially it's in Ithaca, or I guess it's in Interlaken, but it's right outside of Ithaca, I believe. But it's about 45 minutes or so from Binghamton, north of Binghamton, and it's it's a fairly small cemetery. It's not a huge cemetery, and it's Rod's talk to describe where Rod's headstone is, but it's kind of at the back of one end. I don't know if it's north, south, east, or west. Hard to describe it, but it won't be too hard to find him. And he's there. Carol Serling, his widow, is next to him. His brother Robert is there. So the Serling clan is all there in one row. And I've been there a few times, and it's an open, it's easy to get to and everything, and if you're in that area, absolutely you should go and pay your respects. It's a good thing to do.
Nick, Mike Weinstein again. Just a little bit of a correction here, just so people don't get confused. I wish I could tell you that Binghamton is that close to Interlaken. It's like an hour by a straight line. The way the birds fly, it probably is about 45-50 miles. But if you're taking the roads, you're going to find it's a good hour and a quarter, maybe even more. Again, depending upon time of day and traffic.
Yeah.
But it is easy to get to.
That's what it is. I drive fast,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if it's farther than how far is it from, say, Ithaca College?
Well, Ithaca College is just south of Ithaca, and it's an easy drive. It's just a few miles to downtown Ithaca. You got to drive if you're going from Ithaca College, or you're coming up that way from Binghamton. You got to drive through downtown Ithaca, and then it's a straight shot. Up. There's a couple of ways to go. There's Route 89, also Route 79. But Google will take you to Interlaken. It's Google Maps, so whatever GPS service you use. It's an easy, once you're through Ithaca and through the local traffic, it's a pretty straightforward run. It's an easy drive, and it's a pleasant drive. It's pleasant. You'll be seeing the lake, overlooking the lake, and you'll appreciate that that Rod and Carol, that they had a home on the lake. So you'll get to see some of what they enjoyed about the locale, about Ithaca and the environs.
Yeah. It's definitely a scenic drive. It's nice the scenery and everything. So yeah. And I if it's more like an hour or so, but yeah, not terrible.
Okay, and we're down to like 7 minutes left. Kenny, if people are coming into the archive, there's the Talkie Tina doll, a replica of the Mystic Seer from the episode with William Shatner and the devil's bobblehead on the so people can kind of get a good feel for what some of the props in the episodes really look like when they tour the museum, as well as the mask from Eye of the Beholder.
Oh yeah, we also have not one but two Talking Tina dolls, a black and white one and a color one, and we got a Bill Mummy doll that stands probably about 3 to 4 foot tall. We got all kinds of stuff in the archive.
Okay, and yeah, I think you have some of the original drafts of Planet of the Apes.
If I remember right, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's in one of the discussions. Mike and Nick brought that up. I was like, oh, that's really cool. So many people actually rate that as one of their all-time favorite sci-fi movies.
Yeah. But there's something else I wanted to bring up real quick. If people want to see any Uncle Mike stuff done over the years, he's got a bunch of stuff on YouTube. You go on YouTube and you type his name in, and it'll bring up a whole bunch of stuff. When he did St. Mary's Cabaret shows, Ben Franklin school shows called Rock Bottom Players. There's him singing karaoke and all kinds of stuff.
Okay, and Mike also had, I think he also didn't Mike also get some carousel music or original carousel music?
That was donated to the museum.
Oh, okay, donated. Okay, cool. And we have. I need to leave. A couple minutes at the end. Solaris. Do you have any? Shelley, do you have any short comments you'd like to start wrapping the show with?
I just want to say thanks for having me on.
Go ahead.
Sorry, thanks for having me on. I appreciate that you have all thrown this together, and I know Mike, he would have been quite happy to know that he's being remembered this way and having us all come together. And, there was such a nice turnout at the funeral. I wasn't able to attend his celebration of life, but I know that Nick was there, and I from what I understand, there was a good turnout there as well. And Kenny even sang a karaoke song. Is that true, Kenny?
Yes, it is. Uncle Mike's favorite, Frank Sinatra.
Which one did you sing, Kenny?
It was Uncle Mike's favorite song by Frank Sinatra, "My Way."
Oh,
nice.
Oh, wonderful.
One of his favorites.
Yeah, and I know that his favorite hymn was "Victory in Jesus." That was one that we did at the funeral. That was his favorite. Then Kenny had said that they used to sing that nightly. Is that correct?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
We put it up on YouTube and we started singing with it.
That's nice. And I know that Mike would be, he'd be happy that he's in the archive in the display cabinet. I know that he would love the fact that he is in a cookie jar. He would find the humor in that, and he would totally love it.
Okay, Shelley, since you just brought up victory in Jesus, I wanted to leave a couple minutes for Rachel to provide the benediction for this show, and I also want to thank everyone for being kind enough to take time out of your busy days to join this show. But since we have another minister here, I just wanted to end the show with some words from Rachel. So Rachel, you can close out the show, and I just appreciate everyone participating in this. Okay, go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah. Oh, well, first of all, I just want to say very quickly that I'm very humbled and honored to be able to be a part of this few hours, and I, too, was not able to attend his service. I offer these words as we close. And I'm not sure what scriptures were read at the service, but the one that kept coming to... 23. So, yeah, that's what I thought. So I thought of another one that just came to me. Maybe Mike was telling me to read it. I don't know. But this is from Ecclesiastes, one that we're probably all familiar with in one way or another. Chapter 3. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. And for everyone, my benediction is, go now in peace. May the love of God surround each of us everywhere that we may go. Thank you, and amen.
Amen.
Amen. Okay. That's a perfect way to close this celebration of Mike's life. Thank you again, everyone, for participating in this, and thank you to the listeners for tuning in to learn about someone who meant so much to all of us and really had a big influence on Nightlight. And we will see everyone sometime soon. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for arranging.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.